Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy, physically and spiritually. Today is Zayin Cheshvan, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Lecha. So we have to understand the connection between Parshas Lecha, Zayin Cheshvan, and as I'm sure you heard, this week was something which is considered by many Yidden a big miracle, that Donald Trump was elected the president. What are the lessons that we can learn? What is the message that Hashem is telling us, and the connection between these inyanim, these three things, Zayin Cheshvan, Parshas Lecha, and the presidency of Donald Trump, the fact that he was voted president. So as usual, since the war started, we have added to tzedakah, to what we do in the shir. G'dei tzedakah shemakareres sagula. In the schus of this tzedakah, Mashiach should come now. The news today, as we speak, is that there's a very terrible situation going on in Amsterdam. Palestinian supporters have attacked Maccabi soccer fans, Israelis that are in Amsterdam, and the news that we've heard so far, the violence is highly disturbing, and as of now, the situation is not under control. Israel has sent 2 planes. The Rebbe shall helfen as Ali Yidden, b'chol b'nei Yisrael, b'chol makom shehem, they should be healthy and in the best possible circumstances. Now we'll say a kapitel Tilim. And this kapitel Tilim is going to be connected also to the subject that we're going to talk about today. And this is one of the psukim we say before we blow the shofar. Arev avdechol etev al yashko nizeidim. Be a servant's guarantor for good. Let not willful sinners oppress me. So, as is well known, when we speak about the concept Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh, every Jew is responsible one for another. That's why we are guarantors one another. But it also says that the word Arevim also comes from the word Taruvus, which is mixture. All Yidden are interlocked and intertwined. The Jewish nation is one unit. Because the Jewish nation is one unit, therefore every Jew is responsible for another, because we are incomplete without every single Jew. And then comes the third meaning of the word, Orev, which means sweet. Arev milosha sweet. Orev means v'hana sweet. So because all the Jews are interlocked and intertwined, we're really one unit, and therefore we're responsible for one another, and therefore every Jew is sweet by another Jew. So the same thing is over here in this pasuk. The main point I want to bring out is the request, Areiv, Avdechol Atayv. We turn to Hashem and we say, guarantee that it should be good for the Jews. We're talking about Yidden, and we're saying guarantee. Even though in life we say there's no guarantees, but there's one person, one God, Hashem, there's one power that could guarantee. Areiv, Avdechol Atayv. We turn to Hashem and we say, we've had enough, please make it good for every single person. And it also means, similar to what we say in Rosh Hashanah, because when we say Gzeiris Toivos, I've mentioned this before, I love the word, Gzeiris Toivos. Gzeiris Toivos is like opposite. Usually you say Gzeira, it means a negative thing, but when we say Gzeiris Toivos, we mean that it's like unconditional. Decree that this and this should happen, nothing could stop it from happening. And that's what we mean. Also, Areiv, making a guarantee. And also, as we say, this might be another reason why we say it on Rosh Hashanah, we say Shana Tova Mesuka. It should be a sweet year. Areiv Avdechol L'Tov, that would bring a sweet year to every single Yid. Okay, so in other words, the pasuk Areiv Avdechol L'Tov is talking about a Yid. We're not talking about a praise to Hashem. We're turning to Hashem, make it good for the Yid. And this will bring us to the subject that I want to talk about today, which is the idea there's 2 concepts in Yiddishkeit that comprise the Aseres HaDibros, the laws, and Judaism is made up of Tov L'Shamayim and Tov L'Brius. Mitzvahs ben Adam lemokoim, and mitzvahs ben Adam lechaveri. There are those commandments that are between man and Hashem, and there are those commandments that are between man and man. Obviously, Yiddishkeit is both, but it's two ideas, two concepts, like Avas Hashem and Avas Yisrael. So, now let's get into the parsha. What I'm going to say now is really a Sikha from the Rebbe. The germ of it comes from a Sikha from the Rebbe in Chelik Tez Zayin, Parshas Shemois. But in the Gutnik Chumash, that's how I discovered it. In the Gutnik Chumash this week, on the Pasuk, which says as follows, we're talking about this week's parsha mentions the first war. You could even say the first world war. The war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings. So one of the kings, the Pasuk says in the beginning of the Pasuk, in Kapitel Yudalid, Vayihi bimei Amrafel Melech Shinar. There was someone called Amrafel Melech Shinar. Rashi says, Amrafel, who was this Amrafel? Nimrod. Sha'amal Avram, so why is Nimrod called Amrafel? Sha'amal Avram, Poel Otech Kivshanesh, fall into the furnace. So, in other words, this Rashi is saying that his real name is Nimrod. He was given a nickname, Amrafel, and Rashi is explaining the reason for the nickname. But the truth is that it's a Gemara, it's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. There's a machlokes in Erev and a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, and the machlokes goes like this: Vayihi bimei Amrafel, and the Gemara says Rav or Shmuel, Chadoma Nimrod Shmoi. Rav said that Nimrod is his name. V'loma nikra Amrafel sha'omar. Why was he called Amrafel? Because v'hipel Avram sha'omar v'hipel Avram avinu b'tech kivshanesh. Like what Rashi brings over here. V'chad omar, and this is Shmuel. Amrafel Shmoi, his real name is Amrafel. V'loma nikra Shmoi Nimrod, and why was he called Nimrod? Which Nimrod is his nickname. Shehimid as kol elam kulei olav b'malchusay, that he caused the people to rebel against him. So the Rebbe in the Sikha of Shmois Chelik Tezayin brings a couple of disputes, arguments, debates between Rav and Shmuel. And the Rebbe is from the true Torah giants of all time that was into the concept of Leshitose. There were other Torah scholars, the Beis of Engel, the Rogachover, they're famous for it, which means we have 2 sages, Amoraim, Tanoim, Rav and Shmuel from the earliest Amoraim. So we'd have a machlokes. The most famous one is Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, but there's also Abaye v'Rava. There's Abaye v'Rava. The one that I find most interesting in Likutei Sichos is also Rebbe Akiva and Rebbe Shmuel. So in many Sichos of the Rebbe, sometimes it's even more than one way Lishitase. Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is known as Koyach and Poel. Rebbe Akiva and Rebbe Shmuel sometimes is the idea of Bal Tshuva and Tzadikim. A very interesting one is Gidrei Hanoisin and Gidrei HaMakabel. We can't get into all these things now. But the point is that when you see 2 people having a dispute, you have to ask a question. First of all, we have to understand what is the argument. And in our case, the argument really is an astonishing argument. So what are we arguing about? What's the real name and what's the nickname? Everyone agrees that Nimrod is called Amrafel. And everyone agrees that Amrafel is Nimrod. So we're having a question over here. What's his real name and what's his nickname? Sounds like a very interesting Talmudical argument. Punktazei. If you want to discuss Talmud and you want to say they're arguing, what are they arguing about? What's his real name and what's his nickname? So what's the argument about? Now, besides for that, we're getting now to Lishitose in every argument, not even in such an argument like in our case, where you can look at it and think, what's going on over there? It's just semantics. But even in an argument, if we're dealing with the real reality, so to speak, Does he have to pay for a ticket or doesn't have to pay for a ticket? Think whatever you want to call the argument. So even there we have to understand, why is this person saying like this and why is this person saying like this? And even though it seems to be one argument was about medicine and one argument is about law and one argument is about sports and I'm just giving an example, and one argument is about who knows what, they seem to be different realms, different arenas, different schools of discipline, call it whatever you want, different sciences. But we see that these two people are engaged in a number of arguments, and the chidush of the Leshitase is, that means the person is following a general perspective, a general frame of mind, a general approach, a general attitude. And this was the beauty of the Rogatchover, Rabbi Yosef Engel, and the Rebbe. They were able to tie together the connecting thread of all these different arenas and to understand what's really going on over here beneath the surface, what's really the inside story. Why does this one say like this, and why does this one say like this? So, in the Sikha in Shmois, the Rebbe connects Machlokes Rav and Shmuel with another couple of Machlokesin. One is going to be connected to Parshas, next week's Parsha Vayera. But first, let's say what the Rebbe says. In that Sikha, we're going to take it in a different direction. The Rebbe answers that one of the differences between Rav and Shmuel in learning was that Rav took more of a literal approach, straightforward, and Shmuel took more of a pilpul sort of approach. There's actually a Gemara that talks about the svara of Shmuel in another discussion, and the Gemara says about Shmuel, Tova chode pilpalta, charifta mimla tina dekore, which translated in English means one spicy pepper is better than a whole basket of squash. It's a Gemara in Yuma Daf Pei Amid Beis, which means Shmuel had a very sharp, deep, analytical, and sort of style of learning. And Rav's style of learning was more simple, straightforward, direct. So now let's get back to our pasuk over here, and this is just the point that Rebbe makes in the Sikha. The fact is that in Parshas Noach, what we're going to speak today covers Noach, Lech, Vayera. In Parshas Noach, it says that when Nimrod is born, it says, V'chush yoladas Nimrod, hu heichel lies gibber ba'aretz, hu hei gibber tzayid l'fnei Hashem, al ken yom ki Nimrod, gibber tzayid l'fnei Hashem. It says, Cush gave birth to Nimrod. He started to be a rebel against Hashem in the land. He was a powerful trapper of people's minds against Hashem. And therefore it is said about rebellious people that they're like Nimrod, who is a powerful trapper against Hashem. So, according to Rav, the fact that the Torah mentioned already Nimrod, and it said why he's called Nimrod, because he's a rebel, Melashon Merida. So there you have it. The real name of Nimrod is Nimrod. And over here, we happen to know that the Melech Shinner was Nimrod. That's a fact. So therefore, like Rashi explains, and this is Rav's svara, we have to have an explanation over here why he has the name of Amraphel. And that's why it's a nickname. And we have the explanation. According to Shmuel, right away he had a question when it said the word Nimrod, and we gave an explanation why he has the name Nimrod, because he made a merida. Shmuel has a question. It's already unusual. What's unusual? To give an explanation for a name. Most of the names, by a large overriding majority, when it says names of a person, it doesn't give an explanation. So if we give that explanation over there, that means that's the nickname. That's why we have to explain the name. Mashenkin later over here, where it says Vayhi b'mei Amraphel, and it doesn't say an explanation why, that's because that's his real name. That's what the Rebbe says in the Sikh over there. And the Rebbe connects it with the different style, the different methods of learning of Rav and Shmuel. That Rav is more of a straightforward sort of learning, and Shmuel is more of a making with a pilpul and having a whole conceptual idea. Okay. And I'm not going to explain how the Rebbe explains the different machlekes and other arguments that fit this explanation, that it depends on the method, including the one that I'm going to speak on in a second. But first, I would like to, and other commentators talk about this, that maybe you could say that the difference between Rav and Shmuel is as follows. It's based on a Gemara in Bechiris. The Gemara in Bechiris, Daf Memta, says, Kol heichi de pligi Rav and Shmuel, wherever there's an argument of Rav and Shmuel, Hilchas lekerav b'Yisurei, or Shmuel b'Dinei. Then the law went, the verdict, the psak. We go according to Rav's opinion when it comes to Isura, which means, literally they translate ritual, which means ben adam l'mokaim, matters of kashrus, matters of religion, anything which has been adam l'mokaim. And when it says Hilchas Shmuel b'Dinei, that means monetary issues, civil law. Okay. Now from this, we can extrapolate b'derech drush. Not only, so the simple meaning is, Rav was an expert in that area, and Shmuel was an expert in that area. Each one had a special koch, enjoyment. Rav enjoyed the issues of ben adam l'mokim more than the issues of ben adam l'chaverei, so therefore he was considered a bigger expert in that area, just like today with the legal system. And just like today we have Rabbanim, this is the expert in kashrus, this is the expert in Erevin, this is the expert in Gittin, etc., etc. So too, Rav was considered the master, the expert when it came to Yisura, and Shmuel was considered the expert when it came to Chesed Mishpat things, civil laws, Ben Adam L'Chaverei, monetary. But from this, some commentators bring out that maybe you could say it's a difference between Adam L'Mokaim and Adam L'Chaverei. Rav kocht sich more in the idea of Ben Adam L'Mokaim, and Shmuel is kochen sich more in the idea of Ben Adam L'Chaverei. The truth is that this goes very similar to what the Rebbe says about Rebbe Kiva and Rebbe Shmuel, that one was more Gidrei HaNoisen, always sees the part of Hashem in a situation, and the other held Gidrei HaMakabel, sees more the part of the Yidden in a situation. Okay, so now let's go first to another machlekes. Next week's parsha, guess what? Mamish, it says Vayita Eishel, that Avram Avinu, right before it says the story of the Akedah, it says Vayita Eishel, he planted an Eishel Be'er Shava. What does that mean? He planted an Eishel in Be'er Shava. Look in Rashi, Eishel, Rav, Shmuel. It's an argument between Rav and Shmuel. Chadam, one says Padis, an orchard, Lahav Mimenu Pedis Lerchem Besuda, to bring fruits to guests in a meal, and then they will bless the Eibush, obviously, like the pasuk says, Vayikasham b'shem Hashem keleilam. He glorified Hashem through serving the guests, and then he would ask him to bless the one who made the fruit. But V'chadam, Shmuel says, Pundik lachsanya. He made an inn for lodging, a hotel. Uboy kol minei ma'achel. And everything. And there are all sorts of foods. Steak, briskets, chicken, and fruits. Umatzino, Loshaniti, Rashi Bavarns, that we could use the word planting also ba'oil and with tents. Shenema v'yita olei apadnai, he planted the tents of his palace. So based on what we just said, we could say that the same machlekes is over here. What does Rav learn? Rav learns pshat that is going on an orchard. Why? Because first of all, the word vayita, if we look straight forward, means planting. Planting is more used for trees. But second of all, ben adam l'mokim, if the point is to bring him to the Eibishter, what's more organic, what's more natural, is just a tree. Maram Masach Hashem, Agodl Masach Hashem. The guests enjoy the fruit trees. They enjoy the fruits from the trees. And the end, it's a means to an end. And the end is to bring them to bless. So who cares what type of food they bless on? They have a fruit and they bless on the fruit. So that's the concept. The stress is on the Bein Adam L'Mokim. If we look at it on the part of the Bein Adam L'Mokim, the fact that we plant a tree fulfills the objective just as great. But if we want to stress, how can you compare a hotel that has a swimming pool and a gym room, and you name it, we've got it, one-stop luxury with the guest in mind. That's the pshat vayitei shel achila, shtia, lina, etc. It includes everything. So of course the objective is also that they should come to Vayikasham b'Shem Hashem, as explained in the Chassidus, that everything was with the idea to bring people closer to Hashem. But nevertheless, if we talk about the level of service, the chesed, if it's a hotel, it's a whole different level, next level. And that's why Rav says his opinion and Shmuel says his opinion, because the question is, what's the main emphasis? And the same thing is over here, as we explained. Oh, no, 1 second. Let's go back to Amrafel. It's going to be the same thing over here. If the main thing is bin odem lemokoim, so then, and this is Rav's pshat. So therefore, his name is Merida Nimrod, because he's a rebel against Hashem, and that's his true nature, his true essence. But if we say ben odem lechaver is the main point, so what's his real name? His real name is Amrafel, that he started up with another person. He started up with Avraham Avinu. He started up with a Yid. That's the main point. And by the way, I don't want to get into it now. There's a famous story about a chassid who went, I said this many times, it's not so clear with which Rebbe this happened. Some places it says the Rebbe Rashab, some the Rebbe Marash, some the Tzemach Tzedek. Anyways, there was a chassid who was in Lubavitch. He lived in Lubavitch and he lived a certain way. Then he had to move to Petersburg. He moved to Petersburg. He became a successful businessman. Every single time that he came back to Lubavitch, he used to put on the garb of a regular chassid, But the truth is that what happened was that he was already became like a businessman. He took off his chassidic garments. He wore a sharp suit. And he with fancy clothes, etc., etc. He became a bit modernized. Obviously, he was a Fruma Yid, but he became a bit modernized. Anyways, one day after a longer time, more years, he decided, I'm going to fake the Rebbe. I'm just going to come with my modern clothes to Lubavitch. So when he went into Yechidus to the Rebbe told him, Bizaher, Rebbe Chata Shaila, wer is der Emeseich? Der Emeseich is wie in Petersburg, oder der Emeseich is wie in Lubavitch. Und jetzt sehe ich, hat der Emeseich is wie in Petersburg. Petersburg was a very modern, cosmopolitan city, even in those days. Very sophisticated. Anyways, so the Rebbe says, until now I had a question, who's the real you? The you that's in Petersburg, in Petersburg, or the you that's in Lubavitch? Now I see the real you is the you in Lubavitch. Sorry, now I see that the real you is the you in Petersburg. Which means to say, if you're already outwardly, completely dressing in such a way, that means you lost sight of the real you. You've lost sight of what it means to be, at least in a certain place, in a certain level, in a certain place in yourself. Your purity, that what you still aspire to be, is the way it is in Lubavitch, the way it was, in your good days, etc. I'm saying the story in the same way over here. When we look at the person, we had the question. What was the question? What's the argument? Such a serious question. Whether your real name is this or whether your nickname is that. So that's the answer on two levels. First of all, the argument is stemming because the question we have over here is Rav looks at the main thing, which is ben adam lemokoim. So therefore your main transgression is that you're rebelling against Hashem. Shmuel looks at things mainly ben adam lechaverei. You're doing sinning against man, another person. And that's also a question about the person, Nimrod himself. What is his evil? What is his flaw? What is his deficiency? Is his deficiency ben adam lechaverei? Wer is the emeseich? Is the emeseich that you told another person to go into the furnace? That you harass and oppress and persecute other people? Or is the emeseich that you're just a rebel against Hashem primarily? Even though, of course, you did both things. And even though everyone agrees, Nimrod is Amrafel and Amrafel is Nimrod. Okay, it's taking much longer than I thought. So now let's go back to Zayin Cheshvan. First of all, we have to talk about Avram Avinu. And we have to say that the main emphasis over here is the idea, even though Rashi says according to Rav, we have to stress the idea of Chesed. The idea of Chesed is Avram Avinu, there was Yitzchak, there was Yaakov, and they, obviously all three, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, have Chesed. But we know that Avram is the one who represents the ultimate of Chesed. And Gvura represents, Yitzchak is Gvura, which is more the idea of prayer. Yaakov represents Teferes, which is Torah. But Avram is the Gimel Dvarim She'elam Emed, Al HaTorah, Al HaVedah, Al HaGemilas Chasadim. We're living in Parshas Lech Lecha. The main emphasis is doing acts of kindness, acts of generosity. And now we come to Zayin Cheshvan. The Rebbe has an unbelievable explanation. What happened on Zayin Cheshvan? In Eretz Yisrael, today is the day when we start asking for Gshamim, Mashav Ruach Amir Geshem. We're saying Talamotar. Why? We're saying Talamotar. So the question is, and it's a famous question, we should have already asked much earlier for the Gshamim. The time for Gshamim is earlier. So why do we wait till Zayin Cheshvan? So the Gemara says, because the last person who lives the furthest away from Yerushalayim, every Jew has an obligation during Sholosh HaGolim to go up to Yerushalayim. So the ones who live the furthest distance in that land of Eretz Yisrael, the time that they were able to arrive back to their home was Zayin Cheshvan. So therefore we don't pray for rain until Zayin Cheshvan, because we don't want anybody to get rained upon, to make the journey something which will be very discomforting and hard. So we don't want to bring a hardship on another Yid. So therefore we don't pray for the rain until everyone is safely home in their neighborhood. Now it could rain. So the Rebbe has a question, but what do you mean? First of all, most of the Yidden didn't live the furthest away. So the majority, it's perfect, it's fine, no problem. Second of all, if it's a tzorech, if it's a need, people have a need for rain right away, for produce. The world goes around. Money makes the world go around. Rain makes the world go around. As we know, if there's countries that don't have rain, it's a drought. So how could it be that this tzorech, which once you have a tzorech for something, it makes an obligation to turn to the Eibush to bring out this point that he's the only one that's in control, and it's an obligation to pray for your tzorachim, and that to show that the Eibush is the only one that has control and the power. The Rebbe answers an unbelievable answer. An unbelievable, awesome answer of Avos Yisrael. And we can ask the question just again, make it the words. We usually say, Yochid v'rabim halacha kirabim. If it's a majority against a minority, you go according to the majority. And the answer here is so astonishing. If one Jew is left behind, if one Jew is still on the road, if one Jew is still traveling, if one Jew is still going to be bothered, then guess what? I don't feel the need for rain. Because I know that one Jew might be affected by this rain in a negative way, then I don't need that rain. I don't want that rain. I'm not even asking for that rain. Every single Jew in the entire nation, in the entire land of Israel, didn't feel the need for rain unless it would be good for every single other Yid. And even if one Jew was on the road, or a couple from some outskirt on the border, that's where they live, then the entire nation, the entire land doesn't need rain. It's not considered a need. It'll be painful for them because another Yid is in pain. So the lesson is unbelievable. Ben Adam Lechaveroi, in a way, and this is a demonstration of the idea of Ben Adam Lechaveroi even greater than Ben Adam Lemokim. We're saying we're not turning to Hashem with the prayer because it might affect some other person. Ben Adam Lechaveroi. Wow. And here I want to come to Donald Trump. Everybody is talking about every single person. All the rabbis and speakers and shluchim of Chabad is talking about the lessons we take from Donald Trump's victory. And obviously the goyim are not stopping to talk about it, the upset, the greatest comeback, and the lessons and lessons. This reason, that reason. Some people have pointed out to the idea that it was definitely Yad Hashem, that he turned his head a millimeter, whatever it is, and life was saved from that assassination attempt. I want to say one thing which is so obvious that not one person mentioned it. But to me, this has to be mentioned. And that is the fact that Donald Trump was Matzil Nefesh Achas MiYisrael. Of course, there's things that he's done for Medinat Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael, for the land, which affects many Jews. But let's talk about the fact that he pardoned Harav HaChosid Reb Sholem Mordechai Rebashkin. There was a chassid, he was in prison, and it was injustice. It was mamish rishis, what they did to him. I'm not getting into the details of the case. And here comes a person, a goy, and he did an act which is only in his hands. So, in a certain sense, the concept, I believe, is even greater than the other tovus that he did, moving, the capital to Yerushalayim, whatever, all the other good things that he did for Eretz Yisrael. That's really a reflection of his administration. So it's not only his personal power, but a president, it's a mavel de kazach. In a way, we can't even get over it, that a president of the United States has the power to pardon someone. That means it could be the federal court, the civil court, the United States government, the FBI, the National Defense, the Homeland, I don't know what. Supreme Court could have spent $15 million in a case to try to persecute this person and cause everything against him, yada, yada, yada. We still have a concept in the United States of America in the year 2024 that if the president wants, can him mevatel sein die ganze Sach. Mamish azoi. It's hard to understand in a secular mind how such a thing is even possible. But the fact is, it is possible. I usually use it as a mashal for the idea of ein adinim nimtakin el b'sharshan. So the way it is by mitis inyanim, about what a melech is, al pichsid is, and a melech Yisrael makes perfect sense. But the idea that in the year 2024 in modern society such a concept should exist is wild. In any case, so Donald Trump was matzil nefesh achas MiYisrael kipshutoi. How many stories are there? Sai in the Gemara, Sai in Medrash, and Sai with Maises from Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid and all these sort of tzaddikim, that there was a Maise with a Poritz, with a count, with a duke, with a king, with a czar, and some tzaddik intervened and told this person, do this tova, you'll have arichas yom v'shalom tevis. Do this one thing to save this one Jew. And this is what the lesson that I'm taking, besides for all the other lessons. Look at the koyach of being matzil nefesh achas MiYisrael. Just try to look out how you can bring a teva to another yid. And when I mean another yid, I mean one Jew. Just like the lesson of Zayin Cheshvan, and this is the lesson of Avram Avinu, the story of Lech and the wars. We're not going to get into that now. And this is the lesson that we have to take right now for the beginning of the new year. The Eibush should help, that each one of us should look inside ourselves to think how we can help another yid. We've said many times the word from the Frierdiker Rebbe, Atog was metutnet kin teve fanoch hayiden, Atog was metutnet kin gashmis de teve fanoch hayiden. It is nicht tog. A day that you do not do a physical favor for another Jew, it's not a day. That's how you have to live your life. The Eibush should help when the Eibush will see that that's how we look out for one after the other, to look at the individual, never lose sight of the individual, and how you can bring benefit to one single individual. And the merit that you will get from this is infinite and endless. And once Hashem will see us looking out for one another in such a way, He'll definitely reciprocate and bring the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Take it from Yad Mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.